In my Hanukkah video, I referenced the works of 1st century Jewish historian Flavius Josephus. Well, who exactly was he and why is he important? To understand his life and writings, we need to first understand the time he was born into. 1st century Roman Judea was a time of political and religious upheaval. After 400 years, the Jews had re-established an independent kingdom under the Maccabees in the 2nd century BCE, just for it to be incorporated into the Roman Empire in the early 1st century CE. The Jews began to have messianic prophecies during the Babylonian captivity, which was the first time they lost their political independence. So it seems appropriate that they would go through another period of messianism after losing independence to the Romans. Well, during this time period, there were lots of self-proclaimed prophets and messiahs walking around.
Hail, Messiah! I'm not the Messiah! I say you are, Lord, and I should know I've followed a few!
Which brings us to Jesus, who was crucified sometime in the early 30s CE, which means Josephus grew up in the aftermath of his crucifixion, and the elites of Jesus' time were also still the elites of Josephus' time. Today we call this man Flavius Josephus, but that was not the name at his birth. He was born as Yosef ben Mattityahu in Jerusalem in 37 CE to a Jewish noble family. He would have been raised around those who feared the following Jesus and the early Christians had obtained. According to his autobiography, Josephus was a very astute learner, and very knowledgeable about Jewish law. I was commended by all for the love I had to learning, on which account the high priests and principal men of the city came then frequently to me together, in order to know my opinion about the accurate understanding of points of the law. Whether or not this is true is uncertain. He could just be tooting his own horn out of vanity, but considering his writings were targeted at a Roman audience, I'm going to assume that this was more done to establish his credentials among the Romans than for reasons of ego. Being from a noble family, Josephus began his training for the priesthood at the age of 16, at which time there were three main sects of the priests: the Essenes, the Sadducees, and the Pharisees. Over the next 3 years, Josephus would go through the training for all three sects, but he would eventually end up choosing the Pharisees. Being now 19 years old, and begun to conduct myself according to the rules of the Pharisees, which is akin to the sect of the Stoics, as the Greeks call them. If you're curious as to what the differences between those three sects are, I plan on covering that in a future video. So if you don't want to miss that, make sure you click the subscribe button and the bell icon to never miss a video. At the age of 26, he was sent to Rome to negotiate with Emperor Nero for the release of a dozen Jewish priests held by the Romans. By the time he returned home to Jerusalem in 66 CE, the Jews had started a revolt against the Romans. The leaders of the revolt gave him military command of Galilee, where he successfully resisted the Romans until he was captured in 67 CE. He was captured in Yodfat, a village in southern Galilee, where the Romans besieged the Jewish garrison. Josephus was trapped in a cage with about 40 of his companions. There was no escape and there was no way they could defeat the Romans. And they didn't want to be captured either, but they couldn't commit suicide because that was an unforgivable sin. So Josephus created this elaborate system in which they would draw lots and kill each other until there was only one person left who would have to commit suicide. This scenario actually inspired an interesting mathematical formula that became referred to as Josephus's problem, to which videos you can find about it will be in the upper right hand corner. After a lot of stabbing, there were only two people left, and so Josephus convinced that other person to, instead of stabbing each other, to instead go surrender to the Romans. The Roman generals they surrendered to were Vespasian and his son Titus. When Josephus met Vespasian, he claimed that he had received a prophetic vision while trapped in the cave, and in that vision he said that Vespasian would become emperor. Vespasian didn't know exactly what to make of this, so he made Josephus his slave and tasked him with being a translator and negotiator for his war in Judea. Josephus would spend the next 2 years negotiating with warring factions in Judea until he was freed in 69 CE after Vespasian became emperor, believing that Josephus' prophecy was of divine origin. Both Vespasian and his son Titus would become emperor. It was at this point that he changed his name from Yosef ben Mattityahu to Flavius Josephus, adopting the family name of the Vespasians, and Romanizing his personal name. Josephus was considered by Jews at the time, and by many still today, as a traitor. But his inclinations towards the Romans could have been seen earlier than this. His choice to join the Pharisees had been based on its similarities with the Greek Stoic philosophers, and when he went to Rome, he was very impressed with the infrastructure and lifestyle and just everything Roman. And this continued after he returned to Judea. Even while fighting against the Romans, he was constantly trying to convince his comrades out of doing it because he felt like they did not have the martial virtue or the manpower to defeat the Romans. And as it turns out, he was right. When one of the rebel groups, known as the Zealots, refused to surrender to the Romans, the Romans had decided that they were going to sack the city of Jerusalem and destroy the Second Temple. Among the casualties were Josephus' parents and his first wife. Not welcome among the surviving Jews, Josephus returned to Rome with Titus and Vespasian and lived out the rest of his life under the patronage of Roman elites. He would write a history of the Jewish revolt for his Roman benefactors, the Jewish Wars, but he didn't completely abandon his Jewish heritage. In fact, he remained a faithfully practicing Jew his entire life, writing several defenses of his religion as being a truly ancient one in comparison with the religion of the Greeks and the Romans. Even in the Jewish Wars, he condemned other historians who painted a negative portrait of the Jews, and sought to have a morally balanced view. His other great work was a history of the world from the Jewish perspective, the Antiquities of the Jews, which he hoped would soften the Roman view of the Jews after the rebellion. By the time Josephus died in 100 CE, he had had 5 wives and 3 children to survive childhood. And so, there's the life of Josephus. If you're interested in learning more, I have an Amazon affiliate link in the description below to the complete works of Josephus. If you enjoyed this video, then don't forget to subscribe to the channel and click the like button while you're at it and leave a comment below. If you want to support this channel, you can do so by donating on Patreon or sharing this video on social media. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.